Imagine you're standing in the middle of a really dense ancient forest.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. So the air is thick with pine, and you can smell that impending rain. And suddenly, the ground literally starts vibrating beneath your feet.
Oh, yeah, you feel it in your chest before you even hear it.
Exactly. The roar just builds until it's absolutely deafening, and then out of nowhere, these engineering marvels come screaming past you at well over 200 miles per hour.
I mean, they are completely defying gravity, they're defying the weather, and honestly, they're kind of defying logic at that point.
And they really are. Welcome to this deep dive, everyone. Today, we are taking you straight into the heart of the Ardennes forest in Belgium.
Which is just an iconic setting.
It is. We've got a stack of official guides and historical data with us today, detailing exactly what makes the Formula One Belgian Grand Prix so universally revered.
And our mission for you today is to basically pull apart the legendary Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. We really want to understand the mechanics, the psychology, and just the absolute chaos of this place.
Because surviving this track, as the insiders and our sources call it, requires the ultimate racing trinity.
Right, the racing trinity, which we'll definitely get into.
And just to set the schedule for you all, the 2026 Belgian Grand Prix weekend is locked in. It's happening from Friday, July 17th to Sunday, July 19th, with the main race kicking off at 15:00 local time.
So you've got time to prep for it. But when you look at the anatomy of this track, I mean, it's not just a circuit. It's a full-on endurance test for the human nervous system.
Oh, completely.
We are talking about an incredibly punishing mix of characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
You have these massive high-speed straights, corners that are completely blind upon approach.
And the elevation.
Yeah, some of the most dramatic sheer elevation changes of any circuit on the planet.
I want to break that down real quick, because when you say punishing mix, someone listening might just think of a bumpy road.
Right, like a pothole or something.
Yeah, but the elevation change here is so extreme, it changes how the cars actually function. And it demands that racing trinity we mentioned: skill, focus, and bravery.
You can't just have 2 out of the 3. You need all of them.
Exactly. And nowhere is that tested more intensely than at the corner sequence of Eau Rouge and Raidillon. It's arguably, the most famous sequence in motorsport.
Oh, without a doubt.
But looking at the telemetry and the physics of what's happening there in the source material, it's just mind-boggling.
It really is. So the drivers approach this sequence downhill, right?
Okay.
And they're at maximum speed.
Flat out.
Flat out. They flick the car slightly left into Eau Rouge and then immediately face this violent flick right, all while the track is just aggressively pitching upward into Raidillon.
And wait, I've seen the onboard footage of this. They are steering into a literal wall of asphalt.
Basically, yeah.
The elevation change is so steep that the track just completely disappears from the driver's line of sight. It's like trying to thread a needle while riding a roller coaster in the dark.
That is a perfect way to visualize it.
Yeah.
I mean, mathematically, the compression at the bottom of that hill is severe.
How severe are we talking?
The G-forces essentially turn the car into a 5,000-pound anvil.
Wow.
Yeah, it flattens the highly tuned suspension until the titanium skid blocks on the bottom of the chassis literally spark and grind against the pavement. So the physical strain on the car and the driver's neck, by the way, is just immense.
So here is what I'm wrestling with. Is the true challenge of Eau Rouge dealing with that physical compression, like managing a car that suddenly feels like an anvil? Or is it the mental intimidation of that blind crest?
That's the big question.
Right. What is actually breaking a driver's nerve in that specific moment?
Well, according to the guides, it's actually a biological problem. Because your brain is hardwired to survive, right?
It's self-preservation.
Exactly. When you are hurtling blindly up a vertical wall at a speed that could, be lethal, every instinct in your human brain is screaming at you to lift your foot off the throttle.
Just to slow down.
Right, to preserve your life. But overriding that basic primal survival instinct lap after lap, keeping your foot completely flat to the floor, that is what separates a good racing driver from a generational talent.
So it's less about the car's grip and more about the driver's brain overriding its own programming.
Precisely. And it brings to mind a fantastic quote from Fernando Alonso in our source material.
Oh, I love this quote.
Yeah, he calls Spa a circuit where the driver can make the difference.
Because in modern racing, aerodynamics and engine power usually dictate who finishes where, right?
Usually, yeah. But Spa kind of strips away that technological advantage. It exposes the actual human being inside the cockpit. Sheer willpower and spatial awareness can overcome a deficit in machinery here.
And, if you are ever lucky enough to go and watch this in person, the guide maps out exactly where you can witness this.
Oh, the grandstands.
Yeah. There's an elevated grandstand right near Eau Rouge that gives you this sweeping panoramic view from the incredibly slow La Source hairpin all the way down the hill and back up through Raidillon.
You really get to see the whole needle-threading roller coaster in real time.
Exactly. But if you prefer something a bit more raw, the guide says the grandstand at the Pouhon corner is electric.
Oh, Pouhon is insane.
You have these incredibly fast, sweeping downhill left-handers, and the energy of the fans just feeds right into the spectacle.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to spot the Max Verstappen supporters there either.
No, not at all. It's just a massive sea of orange smoke and roaring crowds.
Okay, so the track layout alone, right, the sheer physics of it, is enough to test the greatest drivers in the world.
Absolutely.
But the physical tarmac is really only half the battle, because the other half literally falls from the sky.
Yes. The Gaulicar.
The Ardennes microclimate.
The weather here is infamous.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't just change, it shifts in an absolute instant.
Like zero warning.
Exactly. You can have clear, sunny skies on the starting grid, and within maybe 3 minutes, a localized torrential downpour sweeps across the forest.
And this is where the sheer scale of Spa comes into play, because the geographic footprint of this circuit is massive.
Over 4 miles long.
Right, so you get this bizarre phenomenon where it can be pouring rain on one side of the track while the other side is completely bone dry.
Which creates an absolute nightmare for the drivers. It's a literal grip lottery.
Just totally unpredictable.
Imagine you're in the cockpit. You've just navigated a dry sector. Your slick tires, which are those totally smooth, treadless tires designed to maximize rubber contact on dry asphalt, they are at their optimal temperature.
You feel perfectly dialed in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you turn the next blind corner and the track is entirely saturated. Slick tires on wet asphalt don't just lose grip, they basically behave like ice skates.
But wait, if one corner is soaked and the next is completely dry, how do they possibly set up the car?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because you can't just hit a button and change your suspension or swap your tires halfway through a lap. Do you prioritize the wet setup or the dry setup?
You have to compromise. And that means the car is never perfectly suited for whatever piece of track you are currently on.
That sounds incredibly frustrating.
Oh, the team's data analysts will agonize over weather models. But when half the track is wet and half is dry, the data essentially breaks down.
It just stops being useful.
Right, a weather radar cannot tell a driver exactly how much grip is available on the apex of a specific corner in real time.
So all those millions of data points, the giant walls of monitors on the pit wall, they become useless.
Completely useless. The driver has to feel the available grip through the steering wheel and the seat of the car.
Raw instinct.
Yeah. And when a driver attempts an overtaking move in those conditions, it demands pure, unshakable confidence. If you hesitate for a fraction of a second because your engineers are giving you conflicting weather data, you end up in the wall. Or you lose the position.
You'd think all this modern telemetry would have solved this issue by now, but when the skies open up, it really is just a human being fighting nature.
It really is.
And when visibility drops to zero, technology is even more useless. Which is exactly how we got the most chaotic start in Formula One history back in 1998.
Oh, man. The 1998 race perfectly illustrates what happens when the grip lottery fails everyone at once.
The source guide outlines this beautifully. It's pouring rain. The cars launch off the starting grid, and immediately the spray from the tires creates this blinding wall of water.
Visibility is practically zero.
Zero. And heading down toward Eau Rouge, one car loses control. And because nobody behind can see anything, it triggers a massive, terrifying multi-car pileup.
Just absolute carnage.
Carbon fiber flying everywhere, tires bouncing across the track. I mean, millions of dollars of machinery destroyed in seconds.
And the officials had to immediately red flag the race, meaning they completely halted the session to clear the wreckage and ensure everyone was safe.
And out of that utter chaos, after they finally restarted the race, Damon Hill miraculously survived to lead home a 1-2 finish for his team, Jordan.
Which was their first ever victory.
Yeah, it wasn't about who had the fastest car that day. It was purely about who could survive the carnage.
Well, and survival in the wet isn't just about avoiding crashes, right? It's about actively hunting for grip where it shouldn't even exist.
Oh, like Jim Clark.
Exactly. If we look further back to 1963, Jim Clark delivered what is widely considered one of the greatest wet weather drives in the history of motorsport.
In treacherous pouring rain.
He didn't just win the race, he lapped almost the entire field.
Okay, for you listening, let's put that into perspective. Lapping the field means Jim Clark was so much faster in the rain that he literally caught up to and passed the cars that started the race on the very same grid as him.
It's unbelievable.
He essentially drove an entire extra lap compared to his rivals. How is that physically possible when everyone is driving on the same flooded track?
Because he wasn't driving on the same track, conceptually speaking.
What do you mean?
He mastered what we call the wet line. On a dry day, drivers follow the normal racing line, which coats that specific path in a thick layer of polished rubber.
Okay, makes sense.
And in the dry, that rubber provides maximum grip. But the moment it rains, that polished rubber turns into a literal slip and slide.
So the safest place to drive in the dry becomes the most dangerous place to drive in the wet.
Exactly.
Oh,
Jim Clark was so in tune with the car that he was deliberately driving off the racing line.
just improvising.
Yeah, taking strange, unorthodox paths around the outside of corners just to find patches of raw, unpolished asphalt that offered a fraction more grip.
Wow.
He found traction where everyone else was just hydroplaning. It's a staggering demonstration of the racing trinity we talked about.
The skill to manage the wet line, the focus to maintain the pace, and the bravery to push into unknown parts of the track while others are merely surviving.
Precisely.
That is fascinating. You are essentially reinventing the track geometry on the fly, and reading the track is exactly what Michael Schumacher did in 1992, which the guide highlights as another legendary Spa moment.
Oh, 1992 is a classic.
This was Schumacher's maiden victory, right? And he won it through a brilliantly calculated gamble in shifting weather.
The 1992 race is a masterclass in situational awareness. So the track had been wet, meaning everyone was on treaded wet weather tires. But as the rain stopped, a dry line slowly started to form.
But how did he know it was dry enough to risk switching back to slick tires? Because if you put those treadless ice skates on too early, your race is over.
He used a visual cue that telemetry couldn't possibly give him. He was driving behind his teammate, Martin Brundle, and he noticed that Brundle's tires weren't kicking up as much water spray as they had been a few laps earlier.
Just watching the spray.
Yeah, he saw the spray diminishing, deduced that the asphalt was drying out faster than anyone realized, and immediately dove into the pits for slick tires. And he did this before the radar or the pit wall could even suggest it.
He read the water vapor in the air? That is unbelievable.
It really is.
And he comes out on slicks, finds that dry line, and ends up seconds faster per lap than the rest of the field, securing his first win.
But, 1992 also perfectly captures the duality of Spa. On one hand, you have Schumacher's clinical, calculated brilliance. But on the other hand, you have the raw, visceral danger of the circuit.
Because earlier that same weekend...
Right. During the qualifying session, a driver named Eric Comas suffered a terrifying high-speed crash.
And Ayrton Senna, who was already a massive global icon at the time, happened to be driving past.
It was right there.
He saw Comas unconscious in the car, with the engine still screaming at full revs, which is a massive fire and explosion risk.
Just incredibly dangerous.
So Senna literally stopped his own car, sprinted across the live, active racetrack, and manually killed the engine of Comas's wrecked car. I mean, he likely saved his life.
It highlights the profound moral demands of the track. The danger at Spa is so ever-present that it forces drivers not just to be competitors, but to be protectors of one another.
We often think that modern Formula One machinery, with all its advanced aerodynamics and incredible safety features, has tamed these old-school beasts.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
But reading through the recent history in our source material, modern F1 hasn't tamed Spa at all. The stakes haven't diminished. The drama has just become more complex and, honestly, more emotional.
Absolutely. The modern era of Spa proves that no amount of engineering can completely insulate you from the psychological crucible of the track. Yeah. Just look at the championship battles.
Oh, 2010 and 2014 are prime examples.
Perfect examples.
In 2010, the championship was incredibly tight, and Lewis Hamilton had to survive a race that the guide describes as absolute meteorological chaos.
That's about right for Spa.
Sunshine 1 minute, heavy rain the next. He kept his head through spins, multiple safety cars grouping the pack back together, and wildly shifting grip levels to take the win.
And then in 2014, the tension wasn't just atmospheric, it was internal. You had Mercedes teammates Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg locked in this bitter championship fight.
Just fierce rivals.
Yeah. And when you put two hyper-competitive teammates on a circuit like Spa, where every single overtaking maneuver requires ultimate confidence and zero hesitation,
that pressure is bound to boil over.
It has to.
And it did. Lap 2, they made contact. Neither driver was willing to yield an inch of space in an environment that demands absolute respect.
It's exactly what we talked about earlier with the survival instinct. When two drivers refuse to listen to that instinct, physics takes over, resulting in explosive contact.
But the guide also highlights a moment where modern engineering absolutely triumphed over physics, validating a massive safety evolution.
2018.
Yeah, 2018. The first corner crash involving Nico Hülkenberg, Fernando Alonso, and Charles Leclerc.
It was one of the most frightening visuals in recent motorsport history.
Hülkenberg missed his braking point entirely and slammed into the back of Alonso. The impact was so severe that Alonso's car was violently launched into the air,
Literally went airborne.
flying completely over the top of Charles Leclerc's car.
And what's vital to understand here is the halo device on Leclerc's car. The halo isn't just a simple roll hoop. It is an aerospace-grade titanium structure mounted around the driver's cockpit,
That's incredibly strong.
engineered to withstand the weight of a double-decker bus.
And thank God it is, because the heavy rubber tires of Alonso's airborne car physically struck Leclerc's halo.
You could see it afterward.
Yeah, the tire marks were clearly visible on the titanium. Spa's unforgiving nature provided the ultimate, undeniable test for a controversial piece of technology, and it undoubtedly saved Charles Leclerc's life that afternoon.
Which makes the very next year, 2019, one of the most poignant and emotionally heavy chapters in Spa's long history.
I want to take a moment for this one, because Charles Leclerc returned to Spa in 2019 and claimed his maiden Formula One victory.
His very first win.
He held off a late, incredibly aggressive charge from Lewis Hamilton, crossing the finish line ahead by less than a single second. But the context of this victory is it's profound.
It requires a level of emotional fortitude that is genuinely difficult to comprehend.
He won that race the day after his close friend, Antoine Hubert, tragically lost his life in a crash during the Formula 2 support race at the exact same circuit. Leclerc had to wake up, carry that unimaginable grief, strap himself back into a car capable of 200 miles per hour, and face the very same physical and mental demands of the track that had just taken his friend.
When we define the racing trinity as skill, focus, and bravery, Leclerc's 2019 victory elevates those concepts to an entirely different plane.
It really does.
To find the focus required to hold off a charging 7-time world champion in your mirrors while navigating blind crests and shifting grip.
All under the crushing weight of that grief.
It is a staggering testament to the supreme willpower these athletes possess. He dedicated his first ever win to his late friend.
It really gives you whiplash. Because Spa takes you from the calculated wet weather mastery of the 60s to the sheer survival of the 90s to the profound life-and-death emotional stakes of 2019.
The spectrum.
And then just to remind you how wildly unpredictable and cruel the mechanics of racing can be, the guide brings us to a totally different kind of heartbreak in 2024.
The 2024 race is the perfect example of the cruel perfection that Formula One demands, not just from the driver, but from the physics of the car itself.
So George Russell pulled off what looked like an absolute strategic masterstroke. He executed a one-stop race.
Which is incredibly hard to do there.
Right. While almost everyone else came into the pits twice for fresh tires, Russell stayed out. He nursed his aging, degrading hard tires around this massive, highly abrasive circuit for almost the entire race duration.
He managed the grip perfectly.
So perfectly that he beat his teammate Hamilton to the finish line by just half a second. It was heralded as a strategic triumph.
He relied on pure instinct and skill to manage that tire wear over dramatic elevation changes. He crossed the line victorious. But then came the post-race scrutineering.
Right, where the officials rigorously weigh and measure the cars to ensure they comply with the strict rule book.
Exactly. And here's the catch with a one-stop strategy. As tires wear down against the abrasive asphalt, they lose physical rubber.
Right, they get worn down.
And that rubber has mass. So because Russell kept those tires alive for so long, they lost an immense amount of physical weight. When his car was weighed by the officials, it was found to be a fraction of a kilogram under the legal minimum weight limit.
Because of the rubber he left on the track. He was instantly disqualified and Hamilton was promoted to the win.
Think about the margins there. Spa tested the driver, and the driver passed flawlessly. But the strategy to win the race is exactly what caused the machinery to fail the regulatory test by mere grams.
The circuit always extracts a toll.
Always.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Why should you care about this 70-year-old stretch of asphalt in the Belgian forest? Well, whether you're planning to stream the sessions on F1 TV Pro from your couch, soak up the atmosphere in the fan zone, or grab a premium ticket package from F1 Experiences to stand at the bottom of Eau Rouge yourself, You now know what you are actually looking at.
You aren't just watching cars drive fast in circles. That is the grand takeaway from all of this source material.
It's so much more than that.
The Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps is an ever-evolving test of human willpower. It pits the driver against the relentless forces of nature, the extreme physics of the machinery, and their own biological limits. It requires the absolute peak of skill, focus, and bravery just to survive a single lap, let alone win a Grand Prix.
And it leaves us with something deeper to think about well after the checkered flag waves. We've spent this time dissecting how Spa forces these drivers to adapt instantly when the track is half wet and half dry.
When the telemetry fails and the data is useless.
They have to rely on their own instinct to find the grip. So I'll leave you with this to mull over. What does the constant, ever-present threat of the Ardennes weather teach us about adapting to chaos in our own lives?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right. When the path ahead of you is half wet and half dry, and the data you normally rely on completely breaks down, do you freeze? Or do you trust your instinct, find your own wet line, and steer right into the roller coaster in the dark?
A phenomenal concept to apply to the chaos of the everyday.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.